Hey, I'm Eric Thayne, and you're listening to the Head Smack podcast.
You are listening to conversations with misfits, mavericks, and trailblazers.
Hey, welcome to the Head Smack podcast. My name is Paul Pavolny, and I'm excited to have another misfit with me. I have Eric Thayne with me, and if you want to build a wildly profitable personal brand and grow your business online in 2025, Eric Thayne is your guy. Eric is an entrepreneur and a creator who has helped scale multiple seven-figure brands with organic content and creative marketing techniques, dubbed the king of short-form video by industry experts. Eric has garnered over 500 million. That's a lot of zeros on views on social media and has been featured in People, Cosmopolitan, Huffington Post, and the Associated Press. His video techniques and content systems are used by creators all over the world. Eric, welcome, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Paul. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for being on, and I'm excited about this conversation, excited to hear about some of your thoughts on content. I know you have a new book out. I want to talk about that as well. But before we get started, I want to hear a little bit about your origin story. I'm into superheroes. I love great stories. And so tell me about the origins of Eric, and you can go as far back as you want to go back, as you feel will be relevant to the story of where you're at now.
Yeah, well, we won't go too far back, but I will say that I got into the online game as an entrepreneur and building businesses when I was 13 years old. So I started my first business when I was 13. I was always, from just when I was a kid, like always was interested in like creativity and creating stuff and drawing and art and music and video and all that kind of stuff. But then I also had this thing inside of me that was like, I want to figure out how to build something big with this. I want to be able to make money from it. I had that entrepreneurial bug. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I remember having that from a very young age. And
Now, were
it was
either of your parents entrepreneurs?
No, actually not.
Wow.
I'm the only one in my whole family, whole extended family. Like it's a really weird thing. But for some reason the bug bit me and I got it. And, it was 13, 14 years old. I started my first business on MySpace. So,
Yes.
I remember the MySpace days. And I was designing t-shirt designs for Screamo bands on MySpace. And then I was, hooking up to PayPal, and they were paying me like people from all over the world. And,
Wow.
I was 13 years old. I don't think that I realized how revolutionary that was, that I was able to work with people all over the world. Like that was very, very new. You didn't used to be able to do that. And so, yeah.
So did you learn this? Like where did, like if nobody in your family was an entrepreneur, where did this come? Like this, it seems so different to say, it came from nobody in my family, but I'm doing it. Was there something you read? Was there somebody you saw? Was it a movie? Was it a book? Like what sent you on that route?
That's a good question. I think a huge catalyst for it was one of my good friends. When I was 13, we had just moved to Iowa, and I made friends with a new kid there. And he was but I had the desires before that. So it was like this desire. I don't think I necessarily knew what to do with it or how to do it.
Yeah.
I had lemonade stands and stuff growing up,
Yeah.
and maybe that was it. Like even though my parents weren't entrepreneurial, they did encourage stuff like that. We would do lemonade stands, or we would my next door neighbor and I, we went and we would pick up rocks from the neighbors' yards and paint them and then try to sell them, or just like random stuff. So I think it was that kind of thing. I mean, I definitely grew up my parents were very frugal and very financially conscious. And so we didn't buy stuff. We didn't go out to eat. We didn't have any of that. And I think that might have also kind of created an environment where I wanted to, right? Because I wanted
a little bit of extra something. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, but I had a really good friend when I was 13 who was a nerd of all nerds, like just a phenomenal web developer, and had all the computers and stuff. 13 years old, just like a really brilliant thing, and I was super interested in that. So I started hanging out with him, and he started sharing with me all that kind of stuff and how it works, and I started learning coding and web development, and really started getting into design, more so graphic design, and then it was around the time MySpace was coming out, and so MySpace is a thing, and so I started figuring out how to use PayPal was brand new at the time. Then I was getting paid on PayPal, and then from there it just kind of evolved over time into, I went from graphic design into web development, and then into iPhone development, and started building apps. And then I got into music really heavy because I never wanted music to be a career. But then at one point I was like, I think I do want it to be. So I started performing on the piano. And so I was doing shows and
Wow.
concerts and recording music. And then I started a recording studio, and then I was in the recording studio. That recording studio kind of got me into YouTube, and I started working with YouTubers and helping musicians grow on YouTube. I started my own YouTube channel, making music videos, and grew that up. Had a few like really big viral videos that I made doing that. And then that got me into video production more professionally. And I was like, oh, I really like the video side of it. And so I started making videos and then doing more professional productions for like luxury hotel brands and big commercials and things like that. And then the
And
big
this as a
commercials.
solopreneur, or was this with a
Yeah.
team? Or
Yeah, no,
wow.
just me, like just kind of going through all the stuff. And all this was before I was married. And then, while I was a filmmaker and doing all this stuff, and then I got married. And then this is when I was like 25 now. And then a year later was when I was introduced to like the ClickFunnels and internet marketing community and started to understand that. And I was like, oh, I could create a course about this. And so that I created a course about filmmaking. I worked on that for like 7 or 8 years. We built that up to multiple millions. Um, and we had 15,000 filmmakers in 100 countries around the world in our community,
Wow.
paying customers. And so built that up. And then it was a few years ago when the newest iteration of Eric Thayne happened, where it's really interesting because you see me jump from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing throughout my life. But this is the first time where everything just came full circle. And suddenly it was like now the combination of all of those things and all of those skill sets that have been preparing me for this moment all
Yeah.
came together into what I do now, which is helping entrepreneurs build their business online. And it's not just, everybody out there's helping you build your business, but it's really from the perspective of being an entrepreneur and a creative. And
Wow.
if you're an entrepreneur, how to understand the creative part, the creating content, the branding, the stuff like that to make that make sense. If you're a creative, how to understand the entrepreneur part, the business and the money making part and scaling and all that kind of stuff. And that has just become really it's just all come full circle. And so now that's what
Yeah.
I do. And I feel like I'm better, not to pat myself on the back, but I feel like I'm better poised to do it than almost anyone just because of my background and my experience. Like for me, this has been 20 years of doing this stuff,
Right.
specifically branding, design, music, video, social media. Like you mentioned, we've produced over 500 million views for clients on YouTube. That was back when a view actually meant something, right? You remember that? Like it was actually somebody had to
Yeah.
watch a video for a significant amount of time for it to even count as a view, not like, TikTok today. If somebody scrolls past your video, then it counts.
Right.
So that was significant. And then obviously that was just on YouTube. We've done a ton more on TikTok and Instagram, but I don't like sharing those numbers as much because it's just not as real to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been through all of that, and that's where I'm at now. That's what I do.
Well, man, I definitely want to dive into that. I do want to, though, go back. Like you mentioned, you've done a whole broad range of things. Which of those were the failures? Were there any, or was it just an upward arc for everything that you did, or were there some ones that were some really learning head smack moments for you? And what were your first successes where you were like, okay, I think I can do this. I think I can make this something.
Yeah, I guess it all depends on how you define a failure, because the only time a failure isn't a stepping stone is if you give up, right?
Love that.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I actually went back and counted just recently. I was like, how many different businesses or offers have I created? And my best count was 28 different businesses that I've started throughout my life. And most of them never amounted to anything at all. It was just me experimenting with something and trying something out.
Yeah.
And but it was just a lot of attempts at like, oh, I wonder if I should try this, or I should try this. And I'd spend an amount of time on something, and then I'd become interested in something else. But if you look at it, like every new business got bigger than the last one, usually in most cases. And if you look at the trajectory over time, it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And my first one that actually started to do something significant was when I was working as a filmmaker. And I started it was what I would call a production company, but it was just me.
Yeah.
and my wife, when
Right.
she married into the business.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and we started that production company, and then we started doing some stuff with that. And it was 2015 was the first year that I hit, or no, 2000, it would have been 2016 was the first year that I hit six figures in that production company. So I made
Yeah.
over $100,000 that year just with my filmmaking, which is not insane, but for me it was at the time. And
Right.
that's a
Right.
huge milestone, especially for a lot of filmmakers to be able to make that much in a year. Especially considering that I was doing all the work and I didn't have a lot of expenses, so I was taking home a really good chunk of that too.
Yeah.
That was really big for me. And then that was the same year that I started selling courses. And the funny thing is, I made six figures that year in my production company as a filmmaker, but I also made six figures that year in my very first year as a course creator, right?
Wow.
And
Wow.
so I did double six figures, and I continued doing the productions, but I don't think I ever hit six figures again because this new thing started to take over, and I started doing a lot more of that, and it was really appealing to me because it was something that was more scalable and didn't require me to be on set for like 18-hour days and killing myself, on some of these things that we
Right.
did overnight
Right.
and whatever. And so I really liked that about it. And also, I love filmmaking. I love lighting and cinematography. I'm a
Yeah.
creative very much in that sense, but I'm also an entrepreneur. So I'm very cognizant of how am I spending my time and is this scalable?
Right.
And so that was the production company, hit six figures a year, and then the courses hit six figures a year in the first year. And then it was like 3 years before we got to seven figures. And then,
Wow.
and then from there, it's just kept growing. So it just keeps evolving.
Yeah. So with some of the production projects, you had mentioned some pretty big projects, and for maybe there's a filmmaker that's listening to this and they're kind of where you were at. How did you get some of those bigger projects as a solo production company?
Yeah, it's actually funny. My book actually starts with that story, and it's interesting because the book isn't really geared towards filmmakers per se. It's geared towards entrepreneurs, anybody that wants to go create content and grow their business online. So it could be a filmmaker. But it's not like a filmmaking book, but it starts out telling the story of how I grew my filmmaking business. Because I started out with for the longest time it was not that. I mean, I did a lot of free work and a lot of cheap work. My first paid job as a filmmaker was probably $200, I think, that I
Wow.
got paid to do a whole thing, and that to me was amazing at the time.
Yeah.
And so it kind of grew over time as I became more confident and better at my work, became more confident charging higher prices, but I didn't know hardly anything about sales or about marketing or anything. I was just go make as good a work as possible, and then hopefully people called. And it wasn't until like that last year when things really took off. It was because I started to understand like a real strategy for growing. And what it all came down to was, as a filmmaker, and I think this principle applies to any anybody, uh, is that what I started doing is I started really building a portfolio of what I called passion projects.
Oh, wow.
Meaning, rather than just waiting for clients to call, and then when they would call, going and doing a project and getting paid for it, and then the rest of the time just sitting around twiddling my thumbs, I actually would go spend the rest of that time. I went out creating my own projects and basically showcasing to people, this is the type of work that I want to do. And
Yeah.
these weren't just like throwaway projects, like do it really quick. This is where I put all of my energy into doing something amazing, something beautiful,
Right.
something incredible to build
Yeah.
up
You
a
put in
portfolio.
thousands of
Because
dollars worth of effort to get thousands of dollars worth of client type projects,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and sometimes even that much in money
Yeah.
just to fund these projects. It's the work that most filmmakers aren't willing to do. And again, I think this applies to anybody, whether a filmmaker or any type of entrepreneur. Like the beginning phase is usually like you got to get your portfolio together, your
Right.
track
Right.
record. Like, do you have if you're trying to get clients, like as a coach, have you worked with anybody before? Can you prove that you've gotten people results? Can you prove that you've helped people? Or if it's anything else, like people need that in order to be able to want to work with you. And so as a filmmaker, that's especially important, is that most filmmakers, their entire portfolio is just work that they've done for past clients. So
Right.
it's like it's all past work. It's a museum of old artifacts of stuff that doesn't really represent what they can do now. And usually their past work is work that they've done, number one, with a client who is breathing down their neck and making them make changes, and most of the time making them do things that they wouldn't do, that end up making the project worse than it could be. That's just the reality, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
But then secondly, also, the client is the ultimate like dictator in that position because they're the ones paying. So your job is to do what they want. And so
Right.
a lot of filmmakers' portfolios, I would work with them and I would ask them like, okay, what's the best work that you have in your portfolio? And they'd be like, well, this one, and then they'd give me a long list of disclaimers. But this happened, and blah, 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 blah. And there was never
Right.
any confidence in their work. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's interesting, that you don't have a piece of work that you can point to and confidently go, this is what I can do for you. And so
Wow.
a lot of my coaching for filmmakers revolved around helping them create that hero piece of content that was like a thing that they were ultimately just so proud of, that was better than anything they'd ever done before. And I showed them like my tools and stuff for producing those things, and we got people to do them, to where you had something in your portfolio that was just so good that you didn't have to sell anything. You didn't have to know marketing or sales. All you had to do is show it to people, and they would be knocking on your door trying to buy from you.
Wow.
And I think that's an interesting principle, not just for filmmakers, but for any entrepreneur, is like, do you have a product that is so good? Do you have a track record that is so good? Or do you have results that are so good that you could simply hand those to somebody and they will pay you any amount to work with you immediately?
Wow, man, that is so good. That is so good because yeah, it's so true. As you were saying, what you started doing is creating the types of projects you wish you would get to attract those kinds of clients that would want that kind of a
Mhm.
project. And I think if you're a creative, and this is so relevant, and this is such a head smack for creatives, especially, is if you're creative and you don't have the projects, it means you have the time. And if you were able to do a large project for a client that budget was not an issue, then what would you do? And since you have the time, do it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what you were kind of doing with your video, is like if a client came to you and said, we have a $50,000 budget. Well, you created a project, a passion project that would be worth $50,000, but you had the time to create it, right?
Yeah. I mean, the first really big one that I did, well, it depends on which one you define as that. But the first project that I talk about in the book was a music video that I had a $600 budget, but I made sure that the video was like a $10,000 project, right?
Yeah.
And
Wow.
everybody on the team that was working on it knew they were all working. We were all working for free, and everyone knew like, this is what we're trying to build. We're not getting paid for this. We only have this budget for a few little things here and there, but we're going to make this look like a $10,000 project. And that one
Yeah.
actually turned into my first big project for a client that was a luxury hotel. And they said, we want to hire you. And I was like, this is amazing. I'm going to get my first big project. And they're like, we can pay you $3,000. And I was like,
Yeah.
which wasn't enough for what I wanted to do. But I had the choice there. I could choose to take that $3,000, not hire any crew, not get the nice gear, use the camera that I had at home or whatever. And I could pocket that $3,000 and just continue to make the same old crap that I had been making for the longest time as a videographer. Or I could take that 3,000 and say, okay, you know what? We're going to spend all of this, which is what I ended up choosing to do. I said, okay, I'm going to take that 3,000, but I'm going to spend all of it to get actors and talent and crew and gear, and we're going to shoot on nice cameras, and we're going to everything. And I'm going to do a $20,000-$30,000 project for you for that much. We did that. And the client was so blown away by the end result that they came back to us, and over the next like 3 years, they ended up hiring us for about $75,000 worth of work.
Wow.
Just that one
Wow.
client.
Wow. Now, did you
Yeah.
tell them as a agency that what you created for them was not a $3,000 project?
Yeah,
Did
I
you?
was very, very
Okay.
clear.
All right.
Yes, and
Yeah.
that's a big part of the process. You have to be clear about that if you are going to do. It's kind of like pro bono work, basically,
Yeah.
where a client comes to you because they came to me with a vision for this project that was like very aligned with the type of work that I wanted to do. And that's rare that you get a client that's so in alignment with the type of work that you want to do, especially in the
Yeah.
beginning phases as a filmmaker. So yeah, they came to me with that vision. I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I want to do, the type of work that I want to do, that I need in my portfolio. They said they only had $3,000 to do it. So I told them, I made it very clear, yes, I will do that, but note that I'm spending all of this money on crew and I'm not going to make anything on this, and I'm going to do it for you for this much. And it's really important that I told them that. Even when you do tell them that, sometimes they forget by the end of the project. Because what's funny is the guy that I was working with, the communications manager at the hotel, he didn't. He was the one that I worked with. I didn't work with the VP level guy at all on the project. So I worked with this communications manager, got the whole project done. The VP guy came back at the end, was like, "This is amazing. I've been showing this to people. Everyone's raving about it. Like, we're so excited. We're putting it on our website." They were just like so stoked about it. And then during the time that I was doing the project, in the middle of the project, the communications manager that I was working with ended up leaving the company, actually. And so then when I delivered the final project, I delivered it to the VP. He was excited about it, loved it. He came back a couple months later and he said, "Hey, we want to do another one of these videos. Can you give me a quote?" And I gave him the real quote for like $20,000 for a
Yeah.
project like that, thinking that, this had been communicated, and that was not communicated to
Oh,
him.
wow.
He was expecting another $3,000. And I was like, "Oh, like John didn't tell you that?" Because I told him explicitly, I was like, "I will do this time, but this is just once. If you want to do more of these, we have to charge full price." And I told him that, and anyway, so the VP came back and he was really upset, and he was like, "Wait, why are you raising your prices and all this stuff?" And I explained to him, and I said, "No, this is the reason why. XYZ, this happened. This, I explained this to John. I don't think he communicated it to you. Here you go. Here's what's going on." And then he didn't respond to me. And I didn't hear back from them for a year and a half. So I was like, shoot, like that was such a bummer that I lost this client that could have been such a good relationship because it wasn't communicated. And it was a year and a half. And then what happened is randomly out of the blue, I got an email back from the VP a year and a half later. And he said, "Hey, we got a project we want to work on. Like, can you come up for lunch?" This is in Park City, Utah. "Can you come up and can we have lunch together?" And I was like, "Okay." And I went up there, and they're all, it's a really fancy restaurant, and where they like pull your chair out for you and then push you in and then like lay the napkin on your lap. And and they're like whining and dining me. And it was the VP and this new communications manager. And they were both, just talking like just so kind, like overly kind. "Oh, we love your work and we're so excited. We really want to work with you," and all this stuff. And I was like, "What is going on? I'm really confused. I thought that you were mad at me." And then they started asking all these questions. And then we started talking about a project, like what was it going to take to work together. And it turns out that in the last year and a half, what had happened is they went and hired another videographer that was at the price that they thought that they were, the same price, $3,000 to make a video. They went and made a video for them, and it was terrible. And they hated it. And they learned, oh, that's why Eric charges 20 grand, because they saw the difference. Now, that wouldn't have happened if I never did the thing, if I'd never done the passion project, if I'd never done the 20K project on the 3K budget. If I had just taken that 3K budget and made a video, it would have ended up exactly like the other videographer, right? And so then it just never would have worked out. And this is this thing that most beginner entrepreneurs or videographers or whatever you are dealing with, is that it doesn't matter how much you charge or who's out there. There are people out there who are willing to do the same level of work or more for cheaper or for free.
Right.
And you're always competing with that. So how do you stand out? Well, you just have to be better. You have to not be in the sea of people that can do mediocre work. You have to be able to do the high-end work. And if you can do the high-end work, then your competition goes to almost zero because nobody else is willing to do it.
Right.
And that's ultimately what happened. Is we started talking at that lunch and explaining, they're like, "So how much is it going to be?" And I said, "It's going to be 20K to do one of these videos or around there." And they said, "Okay, we'll have to check and see if we have the budget. I'm not really sure." And so we left the lunch, and then they came back a couple weeks later and then hired us for 20K to do a project. And then we ended up doing
Nice.
like 3 more of those. So
Wow.
that was what happens. And I think it kind of represents the power of like, number one, having a really good track record of your work and really being careful of that, making sure that that's clear, that this is who I am and this is what I do. And I have standards for the work that I do. And there's no cutting corners here. And then being willing to be confident and firm on that and charge high prices for your work, but then also knowing like when those opportunities pop up to do something potentially for cheaper for an opportunity to go higher.
Yeah. Wow, man, there's so much gold in just what you shared there because I think, for creatives, whether they're doing video, whether they're doing branding, whether they're doing logos and things like that, is, sometimes you put in way more effort than you're paid. And then you get upset because you're not valued because you
Mhm.
haven't communicated that you did. And when what you could do sometimes is, if you're doing that, first of all, communicate it, like you had mentioned, you had communicated to the person who ended up leaving, but also even in your invoice is put in what you charged and then put in what it's worth and like list on there that it was discounted or less than what it's actually worth. I've seen people do that as well, where on
Yeah.
the invoice it has the actual price, and then you have, at a 75% discount or whatever, but
Yeah.
just so there's documentation so there's a way for them to understand, this, I loved working with you guys. I wanted to help you out. I'm excited about this project and I want to give it more time than what you're able to afford right now. And so I'm giving you a 50% discount. And so, your budget is 3,000 and I'm going to give you X amount of value and make sure that's clear. So, man, that was so good, Eric. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you bet.
And because there are creatives that listen to this and understanding sometimes the business side of creativity, the entrepreneurship side of creativity is not always an easy thing for creatives. Sometimes the business side of stuff is a little more challenging. And so I think what you just shared there is a great way for somebody to go next level with what they're doing is, do passion projects, do projects that look like the types of projects that you want to take on that you could proudly show off, not ones that you have to offer disclaimers and say, well, the client wanted me to change this and change that and change this
Yeah.
color. And so it's not really that great and I'm not really proud of it, but here, I want to do more of this,
Yeah, yeah.
So that was really good. So let's talk about, you referenced creativity and entrepreneurship. Talk to me a little bit more about that, of how you've been able to both coach and combine those two in what you're doing.
Yeah, well, when I talk about creativity, I think this is really important to understand because, when I say that, a lot of people think like, oh, filmmaking or art or drawing or music or anything like that. That's like art. Okay. Creativity isn't necessarily art. And I think creativity is a lot more important than that. It's a lot bigger than that. And I think everybody has creativity built into them. Some people say, I'm not a creative person. Usually what they mean is like, I'm not into like the arts, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But you are a creative person because like we are literally all creators. Like we're designed to be creators, to create, to come up with ideas, to have, visions for things. Um, and to build things. So I think that everybody has that within them. Some maybe more honed in than others. But
right.
when I say creative, if you're an entrepreneur that's like, I don't have a creative bone in my body, which you'll hear people say that. In entrepreneurship, in business, we call it innovation, right? So it's
Yeah,
innovative. Like, what is innovation except creativity applied to business or engineering or technology or anything like that, right? So that is creativity. That's what we're talking about, is the ability to come up with a business idea or come up with a unique way of solving people's problems or having your own framework or having coming up with content ideas, coming up with a way of presenting your message, a marketing message. There's a lot of creativity in marketing.
right.
So that's creativity. It's like if I can help entrepreneurs to be more creative, they'll be more successful because it just comes down to that. And when I mean that, what I mean by that, typically with most people that I'm working with, is it comes down to they come to me because they want help creating content and like expressing their brand online better, uh, presenting themselves better, growing a following, building their business online. That's a big part of it. But there are a few people that I work with who are actually really good at the content creation part of it. And then they're just like, I need help monetizing this. I need help making money from it. How do I turn it into sales? How do I run the sales calls? How do I build the funnels? How do I do the marketing? And so I work with a lot of people on that as well. And so that ultimately is what it comes down to. And I think most people are one or the other. They're either a creative or an entrepreneurial type. But I just, for some reason, from a very young age, was always both. I felt like I just kind of split the middle on that. And I have a right brain and a left brain that are both very, very, very strong. And I think it's that unique ability or that unique DNA that gives me like a strategic advantage in being able to do this and being able to help people at outsized levels with this. And so that's kind of why I focus on it that way.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I believe that, we're all created in the image of God and God is a creator and therefore we are
Yeah,
creative, right? We have that.
exactly.
And sometimes we nurture it, sometimes we don't. And some have the environment to nurture that, others don't. Others have things that they like more and they don't nurture it as much as maybe somebody else does. So I love that. So let's talk about being a creator. And that's, you've written a book on the topic. So let's talk about what it means to be a creator. And then we can also talk about the monetizing side of that. But in 2025, what does being a creator look like? And you could tie it back into your book that says "Create, Don't Capture," or if you want to kind of ramp us up to that, let's go there.
Yeah. So when I say being a creator, I don't just mean a content creator. So I know it's a term, like the term creator today has kind of been started to use synonymously with content creator, like people who are making a living by creating content, which is a very cool thing that's happening in our world. But that's not really what I mean. And I also don't mean an artist, or like a musician or something like that. So somebody in the arts. What I mean is, well, what I really mean at the deepest level is everyone, right? Because, like you said, we're all creators. We can all create something. Now, not everybody is currently doing that. Not everybody wants to. Not everybody cares to, and that's totally fine. But if you're an entrepreneur, you're an artist, a creative, somebody who has a message or wants to put something out into the world or wants to make something or build something or whatever it is, you're a creator, and that's who I'm talking to, and that's who this book is talking to. Now, the book is definitely geared towards what I would call entrepreneurs, because it kind of approaches the topic from a perspective of how to grow your following and your audience online with the purpose of building a business and making money. But if you're somebody who doesn't care that much about making money from it or building a business, and you just want to like create and build a following and build a community around you and what you do, it's really effective for that too. So anybody who has something that they want to put out there and get out there. And the book has basically three phases, three parts: the creator, the content, and the business. It starts with the creator, the you, how to really understand what your personal brand is, what unique advantage you bring to the table, what is your craft, what is the thing that you're really good at or that you're passionate about that you want to share with the world. It's coming up with that. It's figuring out how to structure that and really being like clear on that. The second part is about the content. How do you create the content? Because content is your message. It's the expression of your message, of your creator brand out into the world. So what do you talk about? How do you come up with topics? How do you research ideas? How do you script your videos so that they'll perform well? How do you make them go viral? How do you, like, all those kind of things around content? And then lastly, of course, is the business, which is then the business aspect of it. When you build a following and now you have people watching your videos, how do you convert that attention into leads and sales for a business? How do you come up with a product? What do you sell? Who do you sell it to? How do you scale up? How do you even scale up your team? Like if you want to scale a team, you want to go that far. So there's a lot to this, and it kind of goes through that entire process. But that's what I mean by a creator. Somebody who's like, I have something that I want to talk about, that I want to share, that I want to build a community of people who are like-minded around. And so basically, here's how to go do that. It's like it's a step-by-step guide. Like, here's the process, go do this, create the content like this, build the business like this. And if you follow that process, then you'll have hopefully a successful business from it, and something really meaningful that you've built that's built around you and your unique passions and skills and what it is that makes you different from anybody else out there.
That's awesome. So what is the first step? If somebody says, okay, I want to be a creator, what is the first step? What do I need to kind of get aligned or set up or clarified to start doing that?
We need to figure out what your brand is. And when I say what your brand is, most people get this wrong. I don't mean your fonts and your colors or your website or anything like that. I mean who you are, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody has a brand. You don't really, you don't build a brand. You are a brand. Your brand is who you are. It's the unique combination of your skills and passions and interests and values and beliefs and all those things that make up who you are, that just make you, it's your unique DNA, makes you completely unique from anybody else, a personality that you have. And most people are completely unaware of what that is for them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if they're already in the online world or they're already an entrepreneur, they're out there playing a character. They're playing this person that they think they need to be in order to attract a certain target audience in order for it to work. And it's fine. You can build a business that way. I did. But you're probably headed for burnout long term doing something like that, because as long as you're playing a character, you're playing an actor, right? And this is how it talks about in the book. Is as long as you're an actor, you're acting like a content creator, you're acting like an entrepreneur, you're acting like a certain person. What's going to happen is at some point you're gonna just end up pivoting away from it, or you're going to change something else because it's not aligned with who you are.
Yeah.
And so if you can create that alignment first, not to get like woo woo about it, or like, some people are like, I don't want to do this. Just tell me how to make the content. But I really mean it. That this is really important,
Yeah.
because if you don't get this right, then you're missing the foundation for what you're
Right.
trying to build. And when you
Right.
can get it right, let me tell you, the content is way more fun. The business grows way faster. You end up working with people that you actually like. There's just so many advantages to this. And so that's the first part. That's the foundation. We get really clear on like, what is it about you that makes you you, that
Yeah.
literally nobody else can compete with, because nobody else will ever be as good at being you as you are at being you. And so as long as they're trying, they're going to be failing. And so if you can figure that out first, like that's a really good place to start.
So, what about for those that might think they are being the real them, but they are actually being the actor or the alter ego? How do you help people to navigate that in some way? How would you start in helping them realize that's not really you, that that's your alter ego, you're acting at that point? Because for some people that it's blurred, that they don't even know
Yeah.
they're doing it.
For most people, the way that shows up and the way that you can recognize it is in fear of getting on camera, is in expressions like, I just don't like social media, in things like, you're always procrastinating, creating content. It's not fun. It feels like a job or a chore to create content, to put stuff out there. Any of those types of things like are actually the first indicator that you're not being real.
Wow.
And I know that probably seems counterintuitive, but I've worked with entrepreneurs and creators who are just starting from scratch to people who have 1 million followers and make $100 million a year. It's the same thing. We deal with the same thing, and the reality is that those are some of the symptoms, I would say, of that misalignment.
Yeah.
Because when you're fully aligned, when you're fully in alignment with who you are and your opinions and how you want to talk about and what you want to be talking about, what you want to be doing, like those kind of things, you don't have any of those blocks,
Yeah.
or at
Yeah.
least they're way, 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 way lower, because when you come into like full acceptance of who you are, this is who I am. This is how I am. This is how I talk. This is what I talk about. This is what I enjoy. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I like to do. And your content now is just an extension of that. It's very natural. It makes it very
Right.
easy. It makes it very effortless, because you don't have to worry about like, what are people thinking? It's like, because like, I'm not making my content for them. I'm making it for me and for
Right.
anybody that
Right.
wants to listen, right? And so that's a very different approach to it, and it's what makes it work. It's like nobody hates sitting in the living room with their best friend who has the same interests as them and just like chatting about it. Nobody hates that. Nobody has
Yeah.
blocks around that. Nobody
Right.
has struggles doing that. And I think when you're doing this right as a creator and you're really built from your internal personal brand, from who you are, um, it's the same thing. That's what it is you're just making a video. For me, being on this podcast is just, I'm just sitting on the couch with Paul talking about the stuff that I love to talk about, that I actually really enjoy, that's really fun for me. So like there's no blocks here. There's no struggle here. Like this isn't hard. This is
Right.
easy. And so I think that's the first sign for people. If creating content's hard, or if it's a struggle, or if it's a challenge, that might be your first indicator that you're out of alignment. Now, I'm not talking about like technical skills, like I don't know how to get the
Right.
lighting right, or
Right.
whatever. There's learnable skills that need to come along with it,
Right.
but
Right.
I'm talking about the internal blocks that stop
Yeah.
you from doing it. And if you have that, you know what I'm talking about.
Man, that's so good. And yeah, having these conversations, that's why I love doing what I'm doing with this podcast, is just having these conversations where it feels like you're chatting with somebody over coffee as opposed to grilling them or an interview or whatever. It's just a
Yeah,
conversation. Tell me about your loves, your passions, and all of that stuff. So what
yeah.
about the people that, we hear the phrase imposter syndrome. Where does that play into this whole, you know, putting your face in front of a camera and creating content?
Well, so imposter syndrome is what it's defined as is basically downplaying your own skill. And it comes from because what you do is so intuitive for you. You might be like really good at something, um, that because you're so good at it and because you know it really well, you forget what it's like not to know it. And so then you don't think that it's all that special or that's all that helpful. That to me, like, so if we get down to the real definition of imposter syndrome, that's what it is. That to me is like the fix for that is really a just an understanding of the principle that like, oh, that makes sense, that I'm really good at this thing, so therefore it's not hard for me, but that doesn't mean that it's not valuable to somebody else who's not good at it. And
Right.
and so, I think, a lot of coaches will struggle with that, or like, I'm not good enough, or I can't teach somebody this or whatever. I'm like, no, literally, if you were working with somebody who's never done it before, they would love to have you to help them to
Right.
do it.
Right.
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 And so when you really see that, and you start to realize that, and you believe it, and you trust that, oh, that's what's happening, then imposter syndrome goes away. Right.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, I'm as good as I am at this thing, and I have a lot of years of experience at this thing, and there are other people who don't have a lot of years of experience, and so I can be valuable to them. So then that's gone. The bigger thing
Yeah.
that gets in the way for people, and probably what you're more referring to when you say imposter syndrome, when most people say imposter syndrome, is like, I'm just scared what people are going to think of me, and that's a completely different thing.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that fear that kind of eats at you when you get on camera and you're about to shoot a video and you freeze up and you get all stiff and you can't think about what to say and your brain fogs up and the words just don't come out right and you're stuttering over your words. Like those things happen because of a fear of like what people are going to think, which is very, very common, I will say,
Yeah.
from people who are just starting out, people who are very established. Very,
Yeah.
very common. And and so, I get asked this question a lot. How do you get over that? And it's not like a quick overnight fix. So just know that up front. But the reality is, we have helped a lot of people with it. I had a client who was literally in therapy for it and went through our programs and then came out of it like just creating content and making it happen. But the reality is that, and again, not to be too woo-woo about this, but I really do think that this is the answer, is it really comes down to just coming into self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Right? Self-acceptance is saying, I am who I am. I am the way that I am. I'm as good as I am in this moment. I am never going to be better at this than I am right now. Right now. I will become better at it later, but at this moment, I'm only as good as I am at it. And that is not going to change. Nothing I can do will change that. And so, therefore, I'm going to show up as I am right now, and I'm going to love myself enough to do that. Haters and all. People are not going to like it. It's not going to be good enough for some people, and that's totally fine because I can't change that. That's who I am. But I'm also committed to continuing to improve myself and to work better and to get better and better at this, whatever this is, and becoming better at it. Um, and I will become better over time. But right now, in this moment, when I'm recording this video, I am as good as I am. I'm in a certain mindset. I'm in a certain state. I'm in a certain mood. There's certain things going on in my life. All of those things are going to affect how this performance comes out. They're all going to affect how the words come out, if it's clear or not. Um, how it sounds, how it reaches people, who it reaches, all those kind of things that are going to happen. But I don't have control over that right now. All I can do is show up and be my best, and then be happy at myself for for doing my best.
Yeah.
Um, and that's really like the mindset that I have to get in for everything that I do, because ultimately that's all that matters. I get on these podcasts like quite often, and or quite often, but like occasionally I'm on podcasts like this and having conversations with guys like you. And um, I feel like the content is kind of flowing right now, like really well. I feel very at ease on this podcast and flowing and acceptance. But there's other ones that I'll get on where I didn't have a good night's sleep the night before, or I didn't, for whatever reason, I'm not feeling well, or I've been sick or something like that, where it's just kind of like, it feels like a struggle to get the words out, or it stutters or whatever. And, but like, I feel just as good as about those podcasts as I do about this one, because I feel like I've achieved at least some level of that self-acceptance, where it's like whatever comes out is the best that I was able to give at the time. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
just going to have to be good enough, because there's nothing I can do about it. And that really ultimately I think is the key to making it happen.
Man, I love that. I think for somebody that was a life changing head smack for him right there. So much value in that, in what you shared there, because yeah, I believe too that what's easy for you is genius to somebody else, and sometimes we don't realize that. We forget that what's easy for us is genius to somebody else, and so we do get stuck in our own heads. And when I was thinking about the imposter syndrome, I was thinking of maybe that person that is like, I know I'm really good at this, whatever it is. But if I put myself out there as that good, will people not like me? Or, because my inner person says I really shouldn't, I shouldn't be putting myself out there as that expert in that area, because I don't have that self-confidence. And so maybe my terms were incorrect, but that's kind of what I was thinking with what you were sharing is, there are some people that are really, really good at what they do, but they don't want to front. They don't want to feel like they're out there promoting themselves in this place, because their inner person has got some struggles. And so what do you say to that person?
It's the same thing. It's a fear of what people think,
Yeah.
right? Your fear of people seeing you as um what are the words for it? Self-centered, having an ego, Y right? That's what am I getting at
Yeah.
it right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because you're
I'm
not
showing off,
really yeah, you're not scared of showing off. You're not scared of having an ego. You're not scared of, um, thinking that you're amazing. You're scared of other people thinking that you think you're amazing, or that you're all focused on yourself, or you're self-centered, right?
Right.
Um, what's wrong with being self-centered? What's wrong with being aren't we all centered in ourselves?
Yeah.
What's wrong with being full of yourselves? Like, what else would you be full of? You are yourself. What's wrong with having an ego? By the way, we all have egos. What is wrong with loving what you do, and being passionate about it to the point where you want to scream it to the world, and you want to share it with people? There's literally nothing wrong with that. Now, tearing other people down to elevate yourself, that's a different thing, but that doesn't
Right.
stem from being full of yourself.
Yeah.
That stems from hating yourself,
Yeah.
right? Most of what people think is being conceited or having an ego or a big head and everything is not self-love. It doesn't stem from self-love. It stems from self-hate. When people hate on you in the comments, when they attack you, when they whatever it is, that is always an indicator of self-hate. I posted something on Instagram recently. I was like, your haters hate themselves, not you. Um,
Wow. Yeah.
that's the reality.
Yeah.
Is that that's where it stems from. Nobody who's in a peaceful, calm, self-centered, loving state in life goes out and attacks other people.
Yeah.
There's no need to. The only time you ever feel a need to do that, to bring somebody else down, is because you're so low that you're desperately trying to elevate yourself. And so if that's the goal, is like, I don't want people to see me as like being out there and being and whatever, like having this thing, you're just it's the same thing. It's a fear of what people are going to think of you, and you're trusting other people's opinions of you more than you trust your opinion of you. And when you come into full self-acceptance that I am who I am, and I am the way that I am, and that's not going to change right now, then that becomes the truth, right?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
fact. People are going to think a million different things about you. You have zero control over what they think about you. The only thing that you can you can worry about is what you think of you. And as long as you think of you highly, then that's a good thing. And I said once, the only way to stop worrying about what other people think of you is to think so highly of yourself that it doesn't matter. And
Yeah.
I really believe in that. I think the key in society, we downplay this idea of thinking highly of yourself. The reality is that what we call thinking highly of yourself is actually a result of people thinking lowly of themselves,
Wow.
right? If you really truly think highly of yourself, meaning self-love, meaning like I love who I am, uh, the result of that almost always, if not always, I guess I would say, is you become a more loving person who cares more about other people, who's more calm, who's more friendly, who's just a better person who wants to help other people. Like that is the result of internal peace and love. So anyway, I know this
That's
gets
so
like
good.
kind of deep and stuff. I mean, I don't want to go too deep
Oh
on it,
man.
but that really is what it comes down to.
Yeah, I wanted to go that deep because, you said the first step is understanding who you are. And if people don't get beyond understanding who they are, if they don't fully understand who they are and accepting who they are, they can't go on to the next steps, right? They can't. And I mean, we're told to love others as we love ourselves, and if we don't love ourselves, we're not going to love others. And so, like you shared, those people in the comments probably don't love themselves, therefore they're not loving others, and they're not being kind to others.
Mhm.
And so, I'm glad we went there and went that deep because that is the first step. And content creation is such a thing that it's worth getting past that first hurdle that a lot of people stop on. And so, once that first step is done, what's the next step that you advise people to become creators?
Well, then it's going out and putting your message out there, because for a lot of people, it's getting over those blocks to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And really, I would say that these are not so much step one and step two, as much as they are kind of like happening in tandem, because a lot of the way that you get over step one is by doing step two. The more you
Wow.
show up and you start creating content, whether it's writing tweets or creating videos or writing on a blog or making Facebook posts or whatever it is on social media, or standing in the street and handing out flyers. I don't know. You can, the more you put your message out there, whether it's a marketing message or a mission or a charity or just something that you're passionate about, the more you start talking about it, the more you will start to see that, oh, by doing this, I can connect with people who also care about it, and you'll build up more confidence in yourself to be able to do it. And
Yeah.
so it's not a matter of like people wait until they're ready to get started. And that's the problem. The reality is you have to start when you're not ready. And by doing it, by doing it, by being consistent at it, you will make yourself ready, and it will become easier and easier.
Wow, that's so good. Yeah, that's why I got the sticker that says clarity through action.
Yes. There you go.
Yeah,
Yep.
sometimes it's taking action that gives you the clarity, and sometimes we wait, for perfection and for everything to be, aligned the way we feel it needs to be, and then we get stuck in this loop of inactivity. And so,
Yeah.
we're coming up to an hour here, and man, this has gone so quickly. And I've got a million more questions, and I'm sure you've got a million more insights. So tell me about the title of your book. Where did that title come from? Is it a response to what other people are telling folks when it comes to content creation, or is there some other meaning to it?
So create don't capture comes from, again, my filmmaking days. And when I was a filmmaker, um, when I started doing those passion projects, they were born from this concept of creating and not just capturing. So to me, building a portfolio of work that was just like, oh, here's all my past work, and I'm a videographer, and I just show up and hit record on a camera. That to me was capturing. But I was like, if I want to be really taken seriously as a filmmaker and I want to be a cinematographer, I need to create. And that's actually where it came from. I started teaching filmmakers this principle is like, if you want to be taken seriously as a filmmaker, they said a videographer simply captures the world as it is. A cinematographer creates a world. And that's the difference between them is really when you start to become intentional about the work that you're putting into the world, when you start to become intentional about what message you're putting out there, what you're talking about, what you're creating. That's really creating, rather than what most people are doing. The actors, like we talked about, are going through the motions of creating content because they went to a conference and somebody was like, hey, you need to create content every day. And they're like, okay, so I'm going to go do it. And then they're just making content every day with no intention of like trying to build something meaningful. It's just like, this is the latest strategy for growing my business, right?
Right.
Those are two totally different approaches. And for content creation or being a creator or online business, as a creator in today's economy to work, it has to come from that position of creating, not just capturing. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. That's what the book's about. So that's why it's called Create, Don't Capture. It's that overarching principle that kind of goes throughout it, because the book teaches step by step how to become a creator and how to grow your business online as a creator. But then it also goes a lot deeper than that in terms of like what it means to be a creator and how to do this correctly. And I really think that Create, Don't Capture piece is the key that most people are missing, that's stopping them from being able to find real growth with social media, with content, with putting themselves out there, is that they haven't really latched onto that identity of creating, of being a creator. And once you find that identity and you really latch onto that, that's when everything flips for people and it becomes smooth sailing and they start growing really fast.
That's awesome, man. How do they get a hold of your book?
You can go to createdon'tcapture.com. And right now, I don't know when this podcast is going to go live, but we have a special limited edition version of the book that is out. This is very limited run. We only printed a certain number of them. Once those are gone, then they're all gone. But when you go to createdon'tcapture.com, it'll either show you limited edition or it'll show you the regular one. So depending on when this comes out, they might be gone. But if you do see the limited edition one, definitely grab one, because that means that there's some left. But they're really beautiful. We did them like, it's a totally different cover design with a nice like dust jacket and stuff. And it's got a certificate in it and everything. It's like, they're really cool. Again, from the perspective create, don't capture, we want to do something special with the launch. So that's why those are out first. Again, once those are gone, then they'll be gone. And then we'll move into, then the book will become available, just the normal book, and it'll be on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all that stuff as well.
That's awesome. Well, be sure to check out that link, and I'll have the link in the notes as well. Before we wrap up here, just one final question. What's a question or a head smack that you wish I had asked you about?
I hate this question, honestly. If I was coming prepared with the questions, I wouldn't know. What's a question that I wish that you asked me about?
Right. Something that you really want to share, whether it's to do with the topic of your book, whether it's to do with just going next level with content creation. What's something that we maybe have not even discussed yet that you could quickly share?
Yeah. I think to go back to maybe just like a recap of this entire conversation and what it's all about is something that's really important to me, and that I think should be more important to more people because of what it will do for you, is really just pulling everything in your life, whether it's your life, your content, your business, everything, into alignment. And when I say that, and this goes back to what we're talking about, self-trust and that kind of thing. When I say that, what I mean is that you're doing things the way that you want to do it and that makes sense for you. Because there's a lot of people out there right now. A lot of you that are listening probably listen to a lot of content online. You consume it. You can't get away from it. Like, it's out there. There's a lot of advice. There's a lot of opinions. And a lot of people have an opinion on what you should do or how you should do things. And you might listen to something that somebody says and go, oh, that doesn't really sound right. But, they're wealthier than me. They have more money than me. They have more XYZ, more followers, or whatever it is. So therefore I'm going to do it. And I fell into that trap for a long time of just doing like whatever it took or whatever anybody else was saying worked at any given time in order to achieve a result. Um, and just completely burning myself out doing that because they were things that just didn't work with either my belief system or my values, or honestly just like the amount of energy that I have and how my body works. Okay. Some
Yeah.
strategies that are
Yeah.
just like really intense. Like I had a coach once that wanted to do like a 4-hour masterclass every day. and and he's like super high energy, like the type of person that could do it. And I was like, I think this is the beginning of when I started noticing like, oh, there's strategies that are just not built for me. Like I can't do that. I don't have that kind of capacity. So I when I started realizing that, I started really making that switch to not just doing like whatever anybody else is doing that's supposedly working, but really figuring out how do I operate? How do I like to operate? What are my unique skills? Like what are the ways that I'm able to work on something that other people can't? What's my equivalent of that, 4-hour masterclass every single day? What can I do for 4 hours a day and not get burnt out on it? Um, that's your secret sauce.
Yeah.
That's your thing. That's what's going to make you successful is when you lean into that and you do it that way and you do that thing. And it takes time to figure that out. And there's a lot of testing that goes along with it. But that's been one of the biggest, I got to say, one of the biggest shifts I've made in my life, and probably the most effective is that, if I look at my life right now, it's more successful than ever, but it's also more aligned than ever. There's just less friction there and there's
Yeah.
less struggle. And I think that the two are not just correlated, but causated in that, if that's even the word, in that it's the alignment that has produced the success because it's fluid. I'm in flow.
Yeah.
I'm on this trajectory and there's no stopping me because there's nothing in the way. And so that's what I would say. I would say don't listen to everybody's advice out there. It's not all for you. There are people out there that are extremely different than you who are giving advice and presenting it in such a way that makes it sound like it's the way or how it needs to be done for you to be successful. It's not. There are many paths towards success in any area of life. There are, whatever type of success you're talking about. It's all about finding the path that works for you and just following it consistently and religiously and never giving up.
Man, that was a fantastic answer to a question you didn't like.
Yeah. Something usually comes out,
That was so good. Well, man, I'm gonna, encourage everybody to check out the book. I'm gonna definitely get a copy for myself as well. We need to do this again. I do want to talk about viral videos. You recently posted about the strategy behind viral videos, and not always
Yeah.
fluke. Some are they just go viral, and it's hard to define exactly how they do it, and sometimes you can be very strategic, and so you have some thoughts on that, and so I want to talk about stuff like that as well. But man, thank you so much for being on.
You bet. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and thanks for letting me talk your ear off about this stuff.
This has been awesome, man. Take care.
All right.